Hey, good morning. We have started the framing since we left you with the floor box. Behind me is, as you can see, is the shed, and it's got walls and it's got the beginning of the roof. I don't have the time in these videos to teach you everything there is about framing. I'll probably done it at some point in time, do a separate set just on framing, but this is about building a shed. There's a million reference books out there. There's great videos out there. There's many resources on framing that will tell you how to do it. I'm going to show you some tips. I'm going to show you, if you're not doing your own framing, I'll show you what to look for on a couple things to make sure that you're getting a good job out of your contractors. And or if you're doing the work, I'll give you the critical eye you need for yourself to make sure that the work you're doing is going to be sufficient. So I'm going to move on inside this shed, and I'm going to show you some details. Okay, so I'm going to give you some of the framing terms 101, right? So a basic stud, there's a stud every 16 inch. The studs that aren't cut and are just supporting the normal wall load are called commons. See, there's common studs every 16 inches. When we get over where this window's, and this is a brace, when you're framing, you want to brace everything to keep it straight until it's all locked together. And we're not all the way locked together yet because we haven't done, you'll see, we just have our rafters up, but we don't have our collar ties up. So this is a window. Come around here. And so typical window, what you're going to do is you're going to frame it up with a header. This is a 2x10 header. It's two 2x10s. Generally Doug fir or southern yellow pine because they have better load characteristics. Two of them nailed together on this one. Now if you're doing a regular house where it's going to have drywall on the inside, we would have put a 1/2 inch piece of plywood between this, and that would have taken it 1.5 plus half would have been 3.5, and it would have been the same width with the studs. It would have been flush. But we're not worried about that because we're doing a shed. The studs on the side, there's two key studs all the time that hold up the header. The one that goes all the way up to the top plate is called the king stud. The one on the inside is called the trimmer. The header is actually sitting on top of the trimmer. Okay, so it's taking the weight of that opening, and that varies. Up to about 6 feet, it's one trimmer. When you get above 16, it's 6 feet, it's two trimmers. I don't know, maybe 10 feet. You have to look up in the code. You go to 3 trimmers. But for this little window, 3-foot window, it's just one trimmer. I'm going to come by over here. I'm going to spin the camera around a little bit and show you a little bit about some of the stuff going on here. So this is the center, or I'm sorry, the corner of these two walls coming together. And so when you frame this thing out, and we do the framing video, you pack out this second stud so that we end up with stud. So if we were drywalling, we'd have something to screw the drywall to on either side of the corner. In here, where we may be doing shelving, then it comes in pretty handy because if I put shelving on this side or put shelving on this side, I have something in the corner to screw to. So it's a good way to frame. I'm going to grab the camera real quick, show you some other details. If we look up at the top of that corner, okay, you can see basically this wall went all the way to the outside corner, and this wall butted into it. That means that there's 3 plates in a wall system. There's the bottom plate, which is the horizontal board, right? There's the top plate, which is right here, and then there's a second top plate that goes on the top. And the idea, what we want to do is the way these corners came together, that top plate is going all the way across the top of this one, and we nail and lock this together. I'm showing the outside another way we lock corners together. Very critical though, because if you don't do it this way, then inside the house you're going to get drywall cracks, guarantee it. The other thing you want to look for is kind of look around if you're following up under a contractor. Does everything look like it's tight? Okay, so all these boards are butted up nice and tight. The angles look like they're right on those rafters, so those rafters are sitting nice and flush. Go look up top. How about these rafters? See how the angle's just right and it's butted up nice and tight? If you don't do that, those gaps eventually are going to lead to a bit of settling. And even if it just settles 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch in 5 years, drywall will crack, okay? It absolutely will crack. So that little stuff, this framing, if you don't see where everything's tight, angles are caught right together, there's not gaps in the studs of the plates, that's good. If there is any of that, you need to talk to your contractor. Just a quick note on this door opening. So we're going to do a roller door here. It's 6 foot wide, 7 foot tall. So that's what this opening is. These walls are 7 foot tall. The other code in this county is the fact that the shed can't be more than 12 foot tall. So if we would have used 8 foot walls with this 6/12 pitch, which I'll explain that, it would have been taller than 12 feet. So what we did was we dropped the wall height to 7 feet, which meant it's the same height as that door opening. So we've got the header sitting on top of the wall, which there really isn't very much load at all on that wall because it's a gable-in wall and the roof is carrying its own load. But we don't want the framing to sag later. I think it looks awful, right? So I'm kind of an overkill guy. So most guys wouldn't use a 2x10 double header up there. But you know what? What would look awful is have this great shed, and 5 years later now the top of the door is bowed. So not good for me. But anyways, that's how you handle that if the opening is taller than the actual wall height to be able to get the header in. Okay, an outside view of those rafters. Now you see those rafters are all cut and they're aligned perfectly. I'm going to show you a template for cutting rafters. I probably have to do another video on that. Like I say, all this stuff takes a little bit longer than we have to go over. But if you've noticed, what we call the tails, the part of the rafter that's hanging over, are not cut plumb yet, and they will be, but we cut those afterwards because there's inevitably a little bit of variation in the walls, just the nature of wood, the way the OSB goes on. So we'll go from one end to the other one, snap a line, we'll take that torpedo level in our pouch, and we'll put plumb lines, and we will cut all those. So when we put the fascia board, it's going to be perfectly straight, and I'll show you that in the next video. On the outside is OSB, oriented strand board, the most common type of sheathing used on house construction these days. Once again, when you come to these corners overlap the way the wall was constructed. So we make sure that where one wall butted to the other wall, we brought that OSB all the way out to the edge and nailed both pieces, and we have locked that corner in tight, which is what you're trying to do, and so we don't have problems later. But anyways, we're probably about half framed. If you want to take a look at it. And then real quick, rafter 101. This is the rafter. This is the template that we used when we were doing those rafters. The one closest to us is the actual template. You make the perfect rafter first, you lay it out, you get it just the way you want it, and then you basically use it as just like a cookie cutter. Use it as a pattern, you mark the other rafters, and ultimately you'll end up with all the rafters being identical. The one over here, I purposely did this to show you bad habits and good habits. When you do this cut on a rafter, which a lot of times it's called the bird's mouth, that's what's going to lock into the wall. You cut it with a circular saw to the line, both directions, and then you clean the rest of it out with a jigsaw. What you'll get is carpenters with bad habits will do this, and they will overcut, okay, with the circular saw because they don't want to mess with the jigsaw until that piece falls out. And that overcut will vary, but on this one, if you look, we've reduced the strength of that tail down to about, I don't know, 3 inches because of that overcut. If you see notches anywhere in your framing, whether it's for the bird's mouth or it's for other things, and they're doing this, then you should have a problem with that because you're weakening the integrity of the wood in its bearing capabilities. So anyways, that's it. So probably about half done, like I said, and we will do the next video when the framing is done.